So we will be, in fact, going through 4 products today. Okay, 2 are from our Platinum line and 2 will be from our Pro VS line. We're going to start with the Platinum products first and then end it with the Pro VS products. Okay, we are going to start off first with the Panoramic camera. Okay, in my time at ISC, I will say that this is probably one of the most popular cameras that people were looking at or wanting to get when we had showcased this off at ISC West. To give you a bit of information, this is a single channel camera. So even though it has dual lenses, and you can see there on the left side that stock image I have provided there for you, there are 2 lenses and 2 sets of LEDs under it. And you would expect that it is 2 sensors. And yes, it is in fact 2 sensors, but it does not actually take up 2 channels on your recorders. Okay, they fuse the image into a single 180 degree. It's actually slightly more than 180 degrees, but we will call it 180 degrees, a single video channel. Okay, it is fused together in the camera. So what's actually produced out and what you get is already the fused image. You don't get 2 separate streams, and you don't need any kind of special NVR or recorder to fuse the images together for you. The camera does all of that work. The camera is also color 247, and it has one of our newer available features, which is the active deterrence. And I'll be speaking about active deterrence very shortly. So what is the main purpose of this camera? Well, the main purpose of this camera is to provide you with that, like I said, 180 degrees field of view. You can see here, we've installed this at the, for anyone who's in Southern California and has come into our office, this is the industry office, and I have stuck the camera on the roof, or I had stuck the camera on the roof to take a video shot of the, this is actually facing towards the northwest. And you can see that it actually does, in fact, get 180 degrees and actually slightly more, since this is actually right up next to the wall. And you can actually see a little behind the wall on both the left and the right sides of the video. Okay. You don't actually sacrifice too much detail there as well, even though you get 180 degrees. Normally, if this were just a single 4 megapixel camera, then you would have to utilize all 4 megapixels over 180 degrees. But since you get 2 4 megapixel cameras, you get 8 megapixels instead, split over the 2 halves of the screens. So you're actually not sacrificing that much quality compared to a wide angle lens. You're actually getting probably slightly better pixel density compared to a wide angle lens instead. Next, we're going to talk about active deterrence. And so when I was earlier referring to people really wanting this camera at ISC West, I am reminded of this conversation I had with one of our big customers there, and that they had wanted active deterrence. And from most of the people that I did speak with them, active deterrence is actually a big selling point. Active deterrence, though it is a fairly low-tech solution, I would call it. For the most part, it's just flashing lights and a built-in speaker, right? You're not really going to think that it's too amazing or anything, but the value it provides is actually quite significant. Okay, the flashing lights does not have to be flashing. They could turn on, so you could use these similar to things like garage door lights, the floodlights that you would install up above garages. Those typically do not flash, or at least in my experience, they don't flash. And you can set this camera to do the same thing, though by default, it does in fact actually flash. The time period in which it can flash or stay on is configurable anywhere from 5 seconds to up to a minute. And the flashing frequency can actually be adjusted. There's 3 settings for the flashing frequency, so you can't get too much fine-tuned control, but I don't imagine that it's actually too necessary to have too much control over the flashing frequency itself. Now, as for the built-in speaker, that one's actually a little more interesting. There are pre-made warnings or pre-made greetings that are already uploaded onto the cameras. These can be anything from siren sounds. If you've watched our YouTube video on this panoramic camera, you may have actually already heard the siren sound. That is actually the same file or a sound file that is played by the camera itself. But there are other things that you can play as well. There are some that says that, you're in a restricted area, or if you want something that isn't really for deterrence, but more for a greeting, there are some where it says, welcome, or welcome, you are under surveillance, where it's not explicitly telling you to get out of here, but at least warning you in some form or fashion that there is still security surveillance at that location, okay? Next, we will be going into the solar camera. The solar camera is probably one of the hottest products. I believe this was sold out almost immediately as we got them. So luckily, I was able to reserve one for myself to use at work for testing and also for marketing to be able to take their videos as well. Now let's go into some of the specifications of the camera itself. That information there is referring to the camera. I know that you may be thinking about, oh, there's a battery listed, or there's a battery shown there, and there is also a solar panel shown there. Why don't I have the specs there? The specs I'll actually be speaking about, but since for the most part we are a security surveillance company, I should be showing you the specifications of the camera itself. This is an 8 megapixel camera. It is 24/7 color. So at night, it still remains in color, so long as there is enough ambient light. If there isn't, then it has its own white light LEDs that it's able to provide illumination with. It does have the ability to connect over 4G. The 4G is not innate. You do need to provide a SIM card, and currently it is recommended that the SIM card be from T-Mobile. T-Mobile is the recommendation for the SIM cards at the moment for use, and all my testing has been with T-Mobile, and for the most part, it has worked perfectly fine. There has been no drop in connections for me. I have been provided with notifications almost instantaneously, maybe about a second to 2 seconds worth of delay, which effectively is almost nothing for a 4G connection. And lastly, the camera is solar powered. Okay, solar powered as in it can receive DC voltage or DC power from a battery, which is connected to the solar camera. You do not actually have to solar power the camera if you don't want to, but for the most part, this camera is a solar powered camera. I know that there's going to be questions about it, so I'm going to nip this in the bud ahead of time. This camera does not support PoE in any way. Okay, so you cannot have a PoE as a backup power. If you want backup power, the backup power will have to be 12 volt in some way if you're not going to be using the solar panel. Now, for the purpose of the solar camera is not really going to be used in standard situations. If you're installing on already fabricated buildings or constructed buildings with, wiring, electricity, network, and stuff like that, then a solar camera isn't exactly the best solution there. A solar camera is going to be used in situations where such things are hard to come by. So on the left, you can see rural locations such as farms. And even though I said farms, there's actually no farm in that picture. But I hope that I give you an idea that it is somewhere out there, far or relatively far away from civilization, where the ability to provide power through hardwire or provide network through hardwire is either unfeasible or economically unfeasible to do. These cameras are true wireless cameras, or this camera is a true wireless camera, meaning that it is its own standalone system. It doesn't actually connect physically to anything other than what is already provided by the camera kit itself, okay? The other potential locations can be things like construction sites. Construction sites may not already have wiring for electricity or network run in yet, but you may still actually want camera systems there in order to watch over things like, building materials and stuff like that, stuff that could in fact be stolen, but you are still wanting to watch over it, provide surveillance effectively. And the solar camera provides you a solution for that. Do remember, again, this is for locations where it is difficult for you to provide any kind of hardwiring or networking solution to them. If you're thinking about things like parking lot or something like that, sometimes there may be other better solutions for it than a solar camera. So I would recommend that you think hard about where you're actually going to apply this camera to, because there may actually be other solutions for you. But the solar camera will be for those really niche scenarios, stuff that actually does happen. People do want surveillance on farms out, Central California or something like that, or on an Indian reserve or whatnot, where the closest power line may actually be several miles away. And in those situations, the solar camera will provide everything for you. Next, obviously, even though my title is sales and technical lead, I'm more of a technical person for anyone who actually knows me personally. So I'm going to give you some information about the solar camera, because if you just look at the specifications, it is not actually very representative of the true working capacity of this camera plus the battery. So first of all, let me explain. The battery is a 30 amp hour battery. It is an 80-watt solar panel. Okay, and given this information, in theory, if the solar panel can run at full power for less than, I believe, 2.5 hours, it should be able to charge enough for that whole day. Okay. However, full power output from a solar panel never truly happens. That's just not possible. When people say 80 watts for a solar panel, they're usually referring to perfect conditions, always exactly perpendicular with the source of the light. The solar panel is cooled to a certain temperature and stuff like that. So we have actually set up the camera, and I have actually been running the camera for at least 3 weeks at this point. And the camera has at no point actually drained, and in fact is actually capping out on its power. You can see here that on this partially overcast day, yes, there actually are overcast days in Southern California. I know it's very amazing, but it received about 8% power over 4 hours. Okay, so at the moment in Southern California, we can probably expect roughly about 10 to 11 hours of sunlight. So I'm expecting about 20% gain over about half the day. And then for the next half of the day, you can see here that I lost 3% over 4 hours at night. So over half a day, I would lose 9% and I would gain 20%. So a full day, I would actually have a surplus of 11% power. Okay. If, however, you cannot provide power to the camera, then the specifications, and when I say provide power, I mean like somehow the sun literally turns off, or it's perfectly raining for 50 days in a row, then you can expect that the specifications that you're going to read about, those will actually match what you're getting, because the specifications are actually telling you how long it takes for the camera to drain the battery, provided that the battery does not get any charge. Okay, so at the very least, in places like California or Arizona or something like that, where there is a pretty significant amount of sunlight, I can pretty safely say that this solar camera will run almost indefinitely, assuming that you have pointed the solar panel either north or south, depending on where you are actually situated. In this situation, I actually should have pointed the solar panel south, and I might have actually gotten more like 10% gain over 4 hours. But even then, with suboptimal installation, I have, in fact, provided myself with a camera that runs pretty much indefinitely. And chances are, even over the winter, it will still run indefinitely. And lastly, I wanted to talk about notifications. So currently, this camera, you're probably not going to be expected to watch over the camera all the time. You're not going to be watching this camera 24/7, since it is out, generally speaking, in the middle of nowhere. Though in my case, it is not in the middle of nowhere. It is in our backyard, essentially, of this building. You can get notifications from the camera, and they come over the 4G signal. Okay, so these Notifications, they can either be provided from motion detection, if you want to do motion detection, and the vast majority of people probably will do motion detection. And you can filter out for humans or vehicles. By default, it does in fact choose both. But in this case, I've actually chosen to use line crossing or intrusion because there actually is quite a lot happening typically in our back. However, outside, you would probably only be triggering for something like humans, or if it's like at a construction site, then vehicles might also be an applicable object type to look out for. And here I show my setup where, in fact, we are actually looking at this truck that is leaving our warehouse after picking up some stuff from us, and it is triggering the line crossing here. I do know that this is actually separate from the notification here. This notification, when I got it, I actually was not able to back up this footage. So I do apologize that I'm only able to use the snapshot here rather than to get the footage and actually show you that it had triggered. However, this one did in fact trigger, and it triggered both of them. So notifications are capable for you to get. And for the most part, I believe notifications are the most useful thing that you're going to get out of the solar camera. If you are actively watching the camera, then that's something separate. But if it is out, somewhere at a remote location, 24/7 surveillance is probably not a necessity. And now we move into the ProVS equipment. So we have two, and this is our first one. This is the dual lens PTZ, as we're calling it. There are two lenses, just like with the panoramic camera. However, unlike the panoramic camera, these dual lenses do take up 2 channels on your recorder. You do not need any special recorder to use this dual lens PTZ on. This dual lens PTZ is also ONVIF compliant, so you can also add these onto a Platinum NVR, and you don't need to have to use a ProVS NVR if you do not feel like using one. The top lens is a fixed wide angle lens, though I say fixed, it's only fixed as in the focal length is fixed. It has a degree of adjustment for how far down and how far up it is actually facing, about 15 degrees that it can be moved in one direction or the other, essentially, or the total range. So if the camera is looking too far up and you see too much of the horizon or something like that, then you can actually, on the side of it, you can't see it on this image, but on the other side of the fixed lens, there's a little knob that you twist to turn the camera to face it further down or further up, depends on what you're trying to do. The PTZ view is meant to capture things in detail. This can be either you're doing something like a patrol or a pattern that you're using. So you are zoomed in potentially, and you may not actually be capturing the whole view. And sometimes that becomes problematic because events might occur outside of what the PTZ is actually looking at. And the wide angle lens above seeks to remedy that so that you don't actually need a separate camera to also be looking at the full view. It all comes from a single camera instead. The camera also has active deterrence, just like the panoramic lens. It does have the ability to flash the lights. You can see that the lights are right here, these three and these three at the bottom. And it also does have speakers, though admittedly, typically installed PTCs are probably going to be far enough away that people may not hear from it. Though, if you do install this indoors, then the active deterrence for the speaker may actually be very useful for that. Though if you install this outdoors, I will be a little suspect of that. Next, I'm going to show you off essentially the 2 views that we have here. So here I have a full view from the wide angle lens. So it covers about 105 degrees horizontally. It's like 115 or 120 diagonally, but about 105 degrees horizontally. This view does not change. This has actually already been angled down very slightly. I didn't angle it down all the way, but it is angled down slightly. And next, this is the PTZ view. So the PTZ view is zoomed in, so you're not capturing everything like the wide angle is from this first picture, but you do get a little closer and potentially get some detail. In this case, this is one of my coworkers in their car, and we have actually blocked out their license plates so that they can't get doxxed or anything like that, okay? So again, these take up 2 channels. The purpose is to get the standard PTZ functionalities like patrols or patterns, while also getting the benefit of a full view. Previously, you would in fact have had to install a separate, wide angle camera, some 2.8mm lens, fixed camera, and it would have to be offset from the PTZ. Do remember that PTZs do jut out quite a bit from where you install it. So if you installed the 2.8 right next to the PTZ, chances are the PTZ would take up the, probably about half the view, maybe a little less, like 40% of the view. So you would have to offset it in order to actually get your full view without something interrupting or intruding onto the view itself. And lastly, we have the ProVS Fisheye. So I also didn't mention, but the ProVS stuff is NDAA compliant. I think most people do know that at this point. However, the ProVS dual lens PTZ is also NDAA compliant. I believe I did not put that down there. But this is the ProVS Fisheye. If anyone has ever used the Platinum Fisheye, this is very, very similar, okay? The only difference is that the options for resolutions are different. So there's only one resolution here, 5 megapixels. Like the Platinum Fisheye, it does have 2-way audio. And like the Platinum Fisheye, it also has software-based dewarping. However, there is going to be a slight difference there with the dewarping that I'm going to explain later. Compared to the Platinum Fisheye, the ProVS Fisheye will always use only one channel on a recorder. Anyone who's used Platinum Fisheye will know that there are multiple different modes. And also in the previous webinar, if any one of you had joined them, I actually explained how the fisheye can consume up to 4 channels on a recorder. Well, the ProVS Fisheye does not operate like that. The ProVS Fisheye will only ever use up a single channel on any recorder, no matter what. Okay, so, and you'll get this 360-degree view, which is the hallmark of fisheye views. However, most people don't want that view. Most people want a view where you dewarp it and you can actually see less deformed views. And so they use dewarping. In the case of the Platinum Fisheye, that is done as hardware, and it actually sends out a separate channel, which is why for the Platinum Fisheye, it can take up to 4 channels to add all of the different views of the fisheye. However, the ProVS one is not like that. The ProVS one is all done in software. This is either done in software through the browser, or it's done through the client software, or it is done through the app. So in this case, what I'm showing you are dewarp options in the browser. And this is also available with the Platinum Fisheye. But where it differs is that in the app, you don't need any kind of special NVR like the Platinum Fisheye requires in order to do dewarping. The app itself supports the software dewarping. As long as you have the app, you add in the fisheye, it will recognize that it is a fisheye and allow you to dewarp the video into a number of different potential views. In this case, I'm using a wall mount view, and I'm choosing the panoramic plus 3 PTZ view. So you can see that I have the option for just plain fisheye and just plain panoramic view. And I can choose between all 3 of them, and they are highly responsive. So there isn't any kind of delay or any issue that I've ever noticed, at least having used it. In fact, I would say that the software dewarping is actually a very responsive and probably one of the best parts compared to the Platinum Fisheye. I would say it's definitely one of the big pluses when you compare it to the Platinum Fisheye, how responsive and how quick and easy it is to move around the dewarped view. And that is actually it for my presentation on these 4 cameras. I know I went through that a little quickly. I do apologize again. I actually still have a bit of that adrenaline. So I'm going to go through the questions. I see that there are 19 questions. So if anyone still has any questions, you can keep asking in the questions, and I'll get to them as I go through. Okay. So let's see. So there's a question. Sorry. Some of these aren't actually questions, so I'm not going to, I'm going to consider them as being answered because I think someone might have incorrectly typed it into the Q&A section. So this is a question from Vaughn, and it says, did that camera have an outline output? So this is at 113, which is either from the panoramic lens or it is from the solar camera. So I'm assuming you're asking about the panoramic lens. Is that correct, Vaughn? You can directly message me if you want to clarify what you're asking. And I'll wait for that, and I'll move on to the second one. So the second question is from Billy Mala, and he asked, can you schedule the alerts for certain times when to activate? And yes, I'm assuming you are referring to the solar camera when I was referring to the MD 2.0 notifications. And yes, you can, in fact, set up scheduled times for the notifications from your camera. This can be for separated between the different types of alerts. This can either just be straight up alerts not being allowed during certain times. There are a bunch of different configuration options that you can choose from, and which specific one you want or that you want to set up. You can obviously speak to tech support to have them assist you with that. But yes, it is available. Oh, sorry. Set that as done. And then let's see. Jeffrey asked this question right here. When the light flashes, does it cause the camera to have to keep readjusting because of the light changing? Generally speaking, that is not going to be the case. These are 24/7 color cameras, so the exposure is actually going to be already quite well, unless, of course, there is something for the light to flash on, like reflect onto. If there is some something that easily reflects, so if there's a mirror very close to it, where the light flashing will cause huge white exposure to happen on the part of the video image, then that could actually cause it to readjust. Though hopefully it hasn't been installed in a situation where that's going to actually happen. If that does happen, though, it will actually readjust itself. And it would readjust itself depending on how you choose to set up the light flashing. You can also adjust the strength of the light itself so that even though it flashes, it doesn't actually have to be strong flashes. And so the adjustment is actually going to be less than if you had maxed out the power of the light itself. Okay. Next question is from Mike. Can the video from the solar camera be stored on a local NVR? So it depends on how you are implementing it. Current implementation does not have the ability to be added onto an NVR and does require that you use local storage. We are working on a solution that is going to be out soon. I can't really give any kind of ETA, but I have been told that we are working on a solution to allow these cameras to be added onto NVRs through the 4G connection, though currently I do not have an ETA for you. This next question, does the panoramic camera produce good images in low light? ACT. I'm not sure if ACT is supposed to stand for something, Alvin, but I guess I'll go back to my specific image here. So I guess you may not necessarily consider this to be a relatively low light image. I do know that there are, in fact, quite a lot of street lights. But if you have used any of our 24/7 color cameras or color 247, or however you want to refer to it as, it is the same performance for them. And so what you would expect from a color 247 camera in low light, which in my opinion is actually very, very good already. I would say that yes, it does in fact produce good images in low light. Next question from Peter. When viewing the panoramic camera on the NVR, is the image on one video pane? Is it squished? So this is two questions. Yes, it is on a single video pane. Is it squished? If the NVR that you are using this panoramic camera on is up to date, it will not be squished. It will instead, since it's using a 32:9 aspect ratio, it will instead have black bars above and below the video in order to maintain the aspect ratio. A corollary or in addition to this is if you are using an 89 series or an 86 series NVR, you can actually customize the live view such that the panoramic camera will take up two video panes instead of one video pane, where you will lose the black bars above and below, and it will still maintain the correct aspect ratio without looking squished. All it does is just take up two boxes of your live views. And that is only currently available for the 89 and 86 series NVRs, okay? Next question, what's the monthly on the service with AT&T ballpark? As we are not AT&T, I can't really provide you with the information on the service cost for AT&T. I don't even actually use AT&T for my own phone service, so I wouldn't even have a personal point of reference to give you on how much monthly cost is. I think when we had purchased for T-Mobile, at least, they did purchase for one time or 1 month of usage. And I think they said that it was like about $30 or $20, something like that. But that is also just a one-time or a 1 month service usage. So a continuous contract or something like that is probably going to have slightly different costs to it. And that I sadly do not have the answer for. I do apologize, but we are LTS and not AT&T. Next question from Gary. Is the solar powered camera a Wi-Fi camera or is it standalone? The camera is not a Wi-Fi camera, as in it does not support 802.11. So it is not capable of connecting to wireless networks that you would expect from like a router or an access point. It does, however, support LTE or 4G bands, which is why you need to purchase and have a plan for a SIM card, okay? And the SIM card is what provides the camera the ability to connect to a cell tower and provide the information to, the greater internet. Next question. There's actually a lot of questions on the solar camera. It's probably the most popular one out of all of them. In regards to the 4G camera, can this get connected to an NVR, and which NVR do you need to connect it to it? Or is it only viewed on the app? I did answer this earlier, but I will answer it again. That camera currently is only viewable on the app. It does have built-in storage, so you don't actually need to provide it with an extra SD card. The built-in storage is 64 gigs. Okay, so if that is enough for you to use without having to provide extra storage, then actually nothing additional needs to be added on. As for connecting to an NVR, currently connecting to an NVR over 4G is not possible, but again, a solution is being developed for it, and I'm told that it will be here soon. Soon is something that I don't have an answer to. I do apologize, but we will get a solution out for connecting the 4G camera to an NVR. Next question from Mr. Anonymous. The solar camera works on 4G. Is there a monthly rate for the SIM card? Generally speaking, yes, SIM cards do have a monthly cost to them. Depends on the service provider that you have. But yes, typically there is a monthly cost to the SIM card. And depending on how much data you actually utilize, so you can actually see that my camera here has used roughly 1 gig of data at this point. There may be some plans that you are looking at that actually might be providing more data than your camera is actually going to end up using. And in those cases, you could probably go to a cheaper rate plan because your camera is still capable of providing all the video you need with the lower data limit. Next question from John. What is the difference between intrusion and line crossing? So this goes into more like tech support stuff, but no problem. I can answer this really quickly. An intrusion, and I'll actually just go to the picture. An intrusion is any quadrilateral area defined. So you can see here, this is the blue quadrilateral I have. And the intrusion is anytime an object outside of the quadrilateral enters into the quadrilateral. That is an intrusion. Whereas line crossing, as you can see, is this red line here that the truck has just crossed over. And it is referring to any object that crosses over from one side of the line to the other side of the line. You can choose to have bidirectional, so it can be either way, or you can only choose, or you can choose monodirectional, as in it only alerts you if they travel in one direction across the line and not the other. Next question from Cheyenne. Can you use the 180-degree panoramic camera for two-way audio? Meaning, can you remote into the camera and talk to someone remotely? Yes, you can do that. The audio, so it has a built-in microphone and it has to have a built-in speaker to play the audible warnings, but both of those are also available for you to use to speak to and listen to someone on the other side of the camera from the app, or from your computer if you're accessing the camera through a computer, for example. But yes, it does provide you with two-way audio. Next question from Tom. Does the solar camera have built-in hard drive? It does not have a built-in hard drive, but it does have a built-in eMMC memory, 64 gigabytes of memory. And it also does have an SD card slot, okay? So you can also provide additional storage on top of the available 64 gigabytes. Next question is from Mr. Robert. Are any of these cameras going to have TVI, or are they just IP? Currently, all of these options are only IP-based options, so there are no TVI options. Not to mention, for something like solar, actually, there cannot be any kind of TVI solution for that, because TVI is analog signaling, which means you have to provide it to some kind of encoder or decoder in order to understand that signal. And generally speaking, that would be the DVR or recorder. So at least a solar solution is, I'm just some guy, but I would say that it's unlikely that there could ever be a solar TVI solution. Next, from Mr. J. Rodriguez. For the PTZ, is it two independent network cable runs to install? No, just like with the panoramic camera, the PTZ is also just a single run to get both of the channels, okay? So just like the panoramic, you don't have to run two cables. Just a single cable provides you with everything you need from the one camera. Actually, the same question happened again for our next question from Mr. Cheyenne. Does the dual lens PTZ have two RJ45 connectors that require two cables? No, does not require two network cables. All of these will only require a single network cable. And then next, Another question from Mr. Roger. And it looks to be roughly like a repeat of some questions, but no problem. Might have missed the answer to this question. Does the solar camera only record on SD card, or can I route recordings to NVR as well? Currently, it can only record on SD card, assuming you are using the 4G connection and probably in some type of solution where the 4G connection was in fact actually required. You could connect this camera to an NVR, but if you're doing it like so, it's most likely not going to be used as a solar solution in that sense. So at the moment, there is no way to record onto NVRs, but again, we are working into a solution and are expected to have that soon, okay? And the next question is, does the dual camera need 2 network cables? No, no cameras need 2 network cables. And then a question from Mr. John. So there is detail in that IC to see the license plate. I'm not entirely certain which one you're referring to, but most likely I think you were talking about this dual lens PTZ. This dual lens PTZ that we installed is actually about only 20 feet up. So it's actually not too far up. So yes, you could in fact actually see the license plate, since the car is not actually that far away from it. Being able to see the license plate is obviously a factor of how far away the object or the license plate is from the camera, how much resolution the camera has, including things like bitrate and stuff like that as well. But in this situation, you were able to actually, if you were to look at the non-edited version of this photo, then you would actually be able to get information about the license plate out of this video. Next question is from Mr. Mitesh. Can you please send a recording of this webinar? Yes, at the beginning, as Fiona had said, the webinar will actually be recorded, and I think it's posted on YouTube, and everyone who actually attended here, so yourself as well, Mr. Patel, will be provided a link to this video so that you can actually peruse it later, okay? And then a question from Mr. Alvin Thompson. Can you use an iPhone to see images from these cameras? Yes, you can. For Platinum cameras, that would be LTS Connect would be the app that you would be using to view the Platinum cameras. And then for the ProVS cameras, you would be using the app that's called LTS ProVS. And yes, they do have apps for both iPhone and Android. Sorry, next question from Mr. Lincoln. Is there enough power from the solar and battery to run an access point? So it is potentially possible for you to do something like this. You will have to look up the information about your access point to see the amount of power that is required to actually run it. You will also have to take into consideration that you may need to convert your power. Do note that the power coming out of the battery is going to be a specific voltage, probably 12 volts most likely. And if you need to change that voltage in order to power your access point, so if your access point is requiring PoE or something like that, you may need to boost your voltage, which you are going to incur some losses from it, and then afterwards, then provide the power to your access point. And through all of that, you'll have to then do the calculations based on the power consumption of your access point, which, if it is several times more than the battery, is unlikely to be sustainable over long periods of time. A question from Angel. Does the camera support multi-carrier? If no, when will it support multi-carriers? So at this point, I'll have to take a look into it. So if you would like to actually send me an email, I can actually take a look into it. I have been asked to test with T-Mobile, and so I have only used T-Mobile. It is potentially possible that other carriers will be supported as well. However, I'm not going to say that it definitely will, as that's something I will need to test out. When will it support multi-carriers? At this moment, again, I also have to say that since I do not know that answer, if you want to email me that question, I can look into it for you and provide you with the answer later on. Oh man, this question's coming in hot. It was like 26 when I started these, and now it's like 32, even though I've answered so many questions. Next question from Mr. Gary. Is the solar powered camera view via an app considering the 4G signal? Yes, that is correct. It is viewed over LTS Connect. Is the Fisheye camera on VIF? Yes, all of our cameras are on VIF. So I didn't actually say this, even though I had said that for the Platinum, or sorry, not the Platinum, the ProVS dual lens PTZ, but the ProVS Fisheye is also on VIF compliant as well, okay? Next question from Mr. Alfredo. How do you download from the solar camera? Is there a cable or SD chip? If you want to go directly to the camera itself, it does in fact have a network port, an RJ45 network port, not PoE. So you can directly connect to it and then export off of it. It does also have an SD card slot. So if you have installed one, you could remove the SD card from it and then export your files afterwards. And lastly, if you are using the app, you can actually directly download from either the playback section of the app, or if you're viewing the live view, you can either take snapshots or you can do live recording at the same time directly onto your phone. The next question from Mr. Jorge Castellanos. Does LTS provide the SIM card for the solar cameras? No, we do not provide the SIM cards for the solar cameras. Next question from Mr. Steven. How does the solar camera hook up to my NVR? Currently, again, we do not have the solution yet for connecting the solar camera to an NVR if it is using 4G signal. And that is something that is coming soon. Okay, the solution will be coming soon for that, I've been told. Next question from Mr. Billy. Is the schedule done through camera web interface or through NVR? If this is referring to when we were talking about scheduling of notifications, there are two different ways as well to be done here. You can either do it through the solar cameras interface, web interface, where you can actually set the arming times of the alarms, or in the app itself, the app also has the ability for you to schedule alarm times. So say I want to receive alarms between 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, I can set my app to receive alarms at that point. And even if alarms come outside of that, my app itself does not warn me of it. It's essentially something akin to like a silenced hours. Next question from Mr. Vaughn. Does the 180-degree camera have line level output? I can add an amp and external speaker. Well, currently I do have the panoramic camera here. And yes, it does in fact actually provide you with line level output. So yes, you can connect it either for your speakers or microphone to the camera itself if you don't actually want to utilize the ones that are provided built in with the camera. So we are actually getting fairly close to the end of this session. So I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can, but I do apologize if I can't answer all of them. There are still 31 questions at this point, even though I've answered so many. So if I don't get to your question, you can actually send those questions over to your sales representative. And if it's something that they can't answer, they will actually consult with me and I'll be able to provide the answer for them, at which point they'll be able to provide it for you. Okay, so let's keep going until the very last second. Next question from Mr. Francisco, talking about the PTZ with two lenses. How about the night vision in comparison with normal IP cameras? The PTZ in this case, this one here, this one is what you would consider more to be a standard camera. This is not 24/7 color or color 247. So at night, it does in fact go into black and white mode. It does also have infrared for it, or sorry, this one I believe does not actually have infrared. So it does actually go into black and white mode. So it does not stay color at night is the important distinction here, whereas the two Platinum cameras do stay color at night. Next question from Mr. Anonymous. Will the solar camera automatically come back on when there is sun again? I am assuming this question is being asked in the situation where overnight the solar camera or the battery has drained to the point where it can no longer provide power to the camera. Yes, when the sun is back out and the battery does charge enough, the solar camera will actually power back on. And if it does have a 4G connection, it will reconnect to the 4G network and you'll be able to access your camera again. Next question from Mr. Mitesh or Mitesh. Does PTZ have auto patrol features? So I guess it'll depend on what exactly you mean by auto patrol. Patrols, at least from my experience, are created from presets. So you would actually create your own presets and then set them up in a patrol in a specific order so that your PTZ patrols between those presets. If you're saying auto patrol as in it will automatically go back to a patrol, then yes, it does have something like that. However, if you're referring to something different and you want to clarify, then you can either directly message me, or if you believe it's complicated enough for the for your explanation that you might not be able to write everything down, send an email to your sales rep and I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability after I receive that question and the clarification. Next question from Mr. Mark. On the new PTZ with overview camera, will there be auto tracking available? Currently, the PTZ does not do any kind of tracking. However, we are working on providing a type of tracking solution for it. It will not be considered smart tracking or auto tracking like it is for the very large Platinum PTZs. It is, I believe, called linked tracking and will use both the lenses in order to support the tracking. Okay, so it's going to be a slightly modified, or not slightly, it'll be a modified version of tracking. But yes, it will be available at some point. Currently not available though. Next question from Mr. Edward Norton. I guess we have an actor here, or maybe just someone with the same name. But on the PTZ camera, how many cable runs are recommended? All the cameras that I've talked about today only require a single connection or single network connection, except for the solar camera. Solar camera does not require you to make any runs for it. And all of them are in fact PoE, except for the solar camera. So you only need to provide a single network connection from a PoE switch or from an NVR that provides PoE itself. Let's see, next question in that, can this also be injected power? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Mr. Edward, when you say, can this also be injected power? So if you would like to clarify, I can answer you again on that, but currently I'm not entirely sure what that means. Your third question is, would you also recommend a PoE switch? All of these support, or not support, use standard PoE 802.3 AF. So you can use any of our LTS PoE switches if you would like. Even NVRs with built-in PoE will also be able to power on all the cameras as well. Okay. Next question from Mr. Billy. I noticed the solar cameras are out of stock. When will they be in stock? This is actually a question that you should direct to your sales representative to ask about when stock will actually be available again. I am unable to provide any kind of answer to that for you. I do apologize, but your sales representative will be able to provide you with that answer. And I do notice that it is actually past 2 o'clock. I will do one more question since I didn't actually mention anything. I'll do one more question and that'll be my last question. If you still have any questions, please send them to your sales rep and have them forwarded over to me. This next question is from Mr. Alex. Besides T-Mobile, have there been other tests like Verizon based on location? Will there be network signal problems? Any other info? There have not been tests, at least from LTS, from anything other than T-Mobile at the moment. Yes, based on location, there can be network signal problems. You can actually look up the coverage map for all the major service providers in the United States at the very least, and they will show you whether or not there's going to be a certain type of signal available in a certain specific area. So if you are using T-Mobile, for example, and you're worried about coverage in an area, you can actually go to T-Mobile's website and look at their coverage map and actually put in a specific location, and they will tell you if you receive a specific type of signal. They'll tell you if you get 4G or LTE. They'll tell you if you get 5G as well at a location, though currently the camera does not in any way support 5G. And that will be my last question. I do apologize for anyone else who was not able to get to, but there are quite a lot of questions to answer and sadly not enough time.
Well, thank you so much, Perry, and thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar today. In case if you missed the beginning of the webinar, you can watch it on YouTube next week, so no worries. We'll send out an email to let you know when the video is uploaded on YouTube. Well, last but not least, 3 lucky winners will be drawn from our audience today for the $50 Amazon gift card. We'll reach out to the winners by email in the next 7 days. And like Perry mentioned, if you have any further questions for the webinar, you can definitely reach out to your sales rep or send us email to marketing@ltsecurityinc.com. We'll be happy to assist you. So that's a wrap. Well, thank you everyone again and have a nice day. Bye, guys.